pain and pleasure. Old habits die hard. It's really true. The older a habit is, the more ingrained it is. So let's take the long view and appreciate that each step along the way, it is very important as we unwind from these unhelpful habits. Mindfulness helps us to illuminate them so we can see what's going on, see the cause and effect, see the intent and the impact. That's the good news, and that's also the difficult news, that it brings this stuff forward for us. But what I love about the mindful perspective is that it's an equal opportunity situation. It looks at pain and pleasure equally, not one or the other, but both, alone and together. Mindfulness brings these habits forward for us to see. The noticing is really good. It's important. We want to appreciate that. This is the first step in the path. Seeing pleasure and pain and how they live side by side. Actually, this is the point of the practice, to see them, how they live side by side. The other morning, Bill mentioned sugar. And I can safely say that's one of, I would say, North America's addictions, sugar. And it's the perfect example for working with pleasure and pain, for seeing the harm under the guise of pleasure, how something so seemingly innocuous can cause harm. I find sugar very interesting because it's one of those socially sanctioned addictions in our culture, right along with alcohol and cigarettes and cannabis these days, right? But there's a story that Bill tells. When he was younger, he had a chance to go around with a Tibetan doctor in the hospital, and the Tibetan doctor was showing the Western students from his tradition what was going on with the patient. And so with one particular patient had gone into the room, and the doctor had looked at all taken all of his pulses and looked at his urine and came back out, and his assessment was the man was in kidney failure. He looked a mess, and he said, "This is the result of all of the sugar that he has eaten his entire life. What we're seeing here, this is the result." And that was one of those stories that stuck in my mind that Bill told me when we first met. And I was like, oh, that's a good story to remember. Like we don't think about how it accumulates over time, our bad habits and what it might cause over time. But I think that's, part of the problem is that when something like sugar, it's naturally occurring. And so we think that natural is good. We make that association, natural is good. But there are plenty of naturally occurring things like poisonous plants that are out there, right? But sugar seems so innocent. And it seems so innocent because it's in everything these days, which leads us to believe that it's actually good for us. That's the misinformation, folks. It's really not. But what's the message that we've received since we were young? And that's what we've internalized. So it's very hard to see that it causes harm. In fact, we have literally lost the taste ability. The more we eat sugar, the more we lose the taste of the sugar, the more we lose the sense of it, right? A little over here, a little over there, a sprinkle over here, a scoop over there. And years of that kind of consuming. And we have slowly but surely entrained a habit that causes us harm. That Dzogchen teaching that I love so much, short practices many times. Well, that's also true for unhelpful habits as well. A little bit of sugar here, a little bit of sugar there. Slowly over time, that adds up to entraining a habit that's not so helpful. And certainly, by a very young age, we have consciously and unconsciously been, associated pleasure with sugar. Well, for good reason. It tastes so good going down, right? And we've associated it with things like reward and with celebration, with treat, with with treats, with escape. Those few bites of chocolate lava cake, I am not in my head. I am in my mouth and the pain is gone, right? Or, right, I'm eating the whole pint of ice cream and I haven't even noticed because I'm in the ice cream and I'm in that action. The first few bites tasted really divine. The 5th, the 10th, the 15th, I'm not so sure that actually tasted good, but I'm now in the habit and the groove of taking the spoon and taking out the ice cream and putting my mouth and tasting the cold, and I'm accustomed to it. And so I eat the whole half pint, right? Returns are less and less. We actually don't even notice that the pleasure has slowly flipped into discomfort. See, most of the time, that's what we miss, that little flip. It takes a while, actually, because, I said yesterday, we often have eaten right past the satiatory mechanism, so we didn't even notice when we're full, right? We don't notice these things. That's how it is with addiction. We kind of start to not notice. Things are more on automatic pilot. But, when we kind of take a closer look at any celebration, notice how sweets are centered. A celebration, whether it's a birth or a funeral, sweets are centered. Now, isn't that interesting? And it does assuage the difficulty in the short term. We just don't want it to be all the time. But look on your food boxes at home. Look on all the processed food. Yes, all of the man-made stuff, right? And likely you'll find sugar one of the top items in all of those boxes. Not always, but most of the time that's so. And that's not an accident. But everything is dose related, and we really want to remember that. It's not about getting black and white about this. It's not about it's all good or all bad. It isn't. We live in gray. We learn in gray. And we want to think about these things. If I have a dear friend who has diabetes and that person comes over for lunch, I'm going to think carefully about what I'm going to serve. I might call that person and say, what do you need? What kind of food would be helpful for you? What's your favorite food? What can I offer you? Because we know, most of us know that if somebody has diabetes, we know the relationship between sugar and diabetes. And we know that their body can't metabolize it. And it's dangerous. So we learn to be careful with that. But for the rest of us, we tend to not think about sugar as being dangerous. We think about sugar in terms of pleasure. Well, there's a flip side to that equation. So we just kind of want to remember that. And also begin to pay attention, read those labels. That's such a self-care act. Recently, the milk industry has gotten into this. They've decided to add sugar to milk. Like, I think, oh my gosh, I'm a nurse by training. And I think, holy smokes, you want to talk about training young little ones to get addicted to sugar? Let's give them sugar and milk. One of the first foods they start to eat. Oh my goodness. And then we wonder, and politicians wonder why there's diabetes, why there's heart disease, why there's dementia and addiction. The richest country in the world has these kinds of ills. And that isn't always an accident. So we really want to learn how to take care of ourselves in this atmosphere that we live in, because the manufacturers don't really care. They're interested in the bottom line. We want to learn how to read the labels. They're banking on us not reading the labels. I assure you. They're banking on us shopping out of habit. Okay? But now think about this. Just think about that, the silliness of adding sugar to milk. Those of us who've been on the planet for 30, 40, 50 years, the only thing that's been done to milk has been it's been pasteurized so that we get out the harmful bacteria. No added sugar. Why do we suddenly need sugar? Really? Breast to baby, udder to mouth. It's really that simple. Why add something else? Makes no sense. Makes no sense. And the thing is if we don't notice these kinds of things, we will just consume them unaware and get addicted unaware. But we're not helpless. Really, we can read the labels. We're not helpless. We can begin to notice. We can begin to notice even when we're like putting in the little bit of sugar here and the little bit of sugar there in our diet, just to begin to notice that and consider over the course of the day how much is being consumed. Just to consider that for our welfare, not out of that bad girl Susan Morgan for having that cookie, but allowing myself to have that cookie, but noticing I don't want to have a whole package of them. I want to really be careful because I do recognize that sugar is a stress on my body. It's a stress on my kidneys. It's a stress on my organs. And I don't need to cause that. And that's one of those things that for me, like Bill was saying, like, what are those little markers that help us to wake up? That's one of the ones for me. What are the little things that help you to just begin to bring that forward? The dangers of it, not too much, not too much. We can have some, but treat it as a treat. As a treat, not a staple. This is the difficulty with the socially sanctioned addictions. We're not trained to look at them and to consider the ways in which they might cause harm. So here are the things. We can't stop our habits on a dime, and especially we can't stop sugar. It's really been so much ingrained in us since we were very young. But we can really begin to understand that it's a slow unwinding from these habits. And we can put a little mindfulness stake in the ground and begin to, with caring attention, be curious and notice what we're doing. Pay attention to the cause and effect, how it feels. How it feels the first bite you have the piece of chocolate cake to the last bite. Does the first one and the last one taste the same? Maybe yes, maybe no. But are you done? Is that enough? Feel that for yourself. Let yourself begin to learn from kind eyes, as if you were a wise elder sitting right next to yourself, having that wonderful dessert. Right there. And the wise elder is happy to see you enjoying that lovely dessert, knowing that it's special. Treat it special. Treat it special. We can begin to do that for ourselves. We can begin to look with those eyes of a wise elder, kind elder. We may not be ready to stop, but we can be nice to ourselves. We can begin to notice that, oh, here I am again. Here I am again, reaching in to the bag of cookies. Okay, all right, I'm not ready to stop yet, but I'm going to pay attention. I'm not going to zone out. I'm going to pay attention. Yes, you can have the cookie. Just feel the effect. That's all. Just feel the effect. Cause and effect. Moderation and pacing. This is how we learn. This is how we learn. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind attention.